Hello everyone. In this video, I will show you how to install a Nagios server in Ubuntu 22.04. The installation of Nagios will be done from the package present on the Ubuntu repository, so we won't compile anything. It's really a very simple tutorial. We're going to install package, configure Nagios, and then I will show you how to monitor another Linux machine. And in another video coming out shortly, I will show you how to monitor a Windows machine. When I talk about monitor, I will show you how to monitor services. For example, checking the CPU usage, the memory usage, and the disk space. So here the command to install Nagios 4 and Ubuntu. Sudo is to execute the command with the admin right, followed by apt install Nagios 4. It will ask us for our user password. And we see the list of the package which will be installed on our machine. At the end, we see the number of package which will be installed, the total size of the package which will be downloaded, and finally, how much disk space will be used for the installation. So it asks us to confirm. I'm going to do it by pressing the Y key on my keyboard. A screen appears with the title postfix configuration. This is to configure the mail server because Nagios can send email alert. It needs an email server. It asks us how we want to configure our mail server. Of course, it's not the purpose of this video to explain how to configure postfix. I'm going to use the default configuration and its internet site. Here we see a description of each option proposed by the postfix installation. You can adjust with the option you want. By example, if you have a smart host, a machine to send all email to, you can use internet with smart host. As I said earlier, I will use the default configuration of postfix and I will choose internet site. If you want Nagios to send email to your real email address on the internet, for example to your Gmail address, that will not be covered by this video. But I will make a video soon to show you how to correctly configure postfix to do that. I choose internet site and with the tab key I go to OK, and I press enter. The other screen is also for configuring postfix. It asks me about the host name that I want. I'm going to call it the same name as my machine host name. It will be ub-nagios-srv. So I don't change anything, it's already OK, and I press again the tab key to choose OK, and I press enter. The installation continues. It should take a few minutes depending on your internet connection and the speed of your hard drive. This machine where I'm installing Nagios is a new Ubuntu server, freshly installed without a graphical interface. Because Nagios can send email, it have as prerequisite to install the postfix server, which it is an email server in Linux. That's why installing the Nagios package, it also installed the postfix server. We also see that Apache 2 is being installed. This is also a Nagios requirement because it have a web interface, so it need the Apache server for it. After the installation, we're going to do a little test of our web server to see if it works. I'm going to find my Nagios server IP address. So here in my case, it is 10.0.0.33. Your Nagios server IP address should be static or at least reserved on your DHCP server to make sure it will not change. In my case, I configure it with a static IP address. If you want to know how to do that, I made a video on my YouTube channel. I will put the link in the description. We're going on another machine to test the web server of our Nagios server. I just opened Firefox to do that. In the address bar, just typed http:// followed by the server IP address. Oh yes, it worked! We have the Apache default page. Now we're going to see if I'm able to go on the Nagios web interface. For that, you just have to add /nagios4 after the IP address on the address bar. And yes, it also worked. For this tutorial, there's two little things we need to fix. First of all, it didn't ask us for a password. And two, if I click on the host link, it does not open the page. It tried to download a CGI file. We are going to activate the Apache CGI module to get it work. So I go back on my Nagios server. The first command I'm going to do is sudo to have administrator rights, followed by that command. It will activate the CGI Apache module. It asks me once again for my user password to be sure it's me. It's done. To activate the new configuration, we need to restart the Apache 2 server. It can be done with this command. But we will do this command later, because there's another thing I want to do before. I want Nagios server to ask me for a user and a password when I try to connect to it. So basically, the Apache 2 configuration is in the /etc/apache2 directory. And we have a little configuration to do in the nagios4-cgi file. Here is the exact path of the config file. We will edit it soon. But before the modification of this file, it may be relevant to make a backup of it. We will have the original file to restore it if some things go wrong. Here is the command to do that. So with this command, it will copy the file in the same directory, but it will add the suffix .backup. So just to be sure, we will list the directory. And here we see our backup file is there. Here's the file that we're going to modify, and here's the backup.
Here's the file we're going to modify, and here's the backup. Here's the file we're going to modify, and here's the backup.
Well, let's get back to our topic. Once again, use your favorite text editor, VI or Nano or whatever you want as file editor. If you know another one, press enter to edit the file, and here what it should look like. Let's go down a little bit. You will see the Nagios4 directory Apache settings. So if you want to configure it to ask us for a password, here what you need to do. We see some instruction in the files section. Just copy them and paste it in the directory section. There is one line to modify. First, you need to comment out the require all granted line. To comment on a line, you just have to add the hash sign in front of the line. For the next step, uncomment the following line, require valid user. To do that, you need to remove the little hash sign in front of the line. That line means it will be necessary to have a valid user to access the Nagios web interface. We must also modify the out name line. We will delete Nagios 4 and replace it by restricted Nagios 4 access. Be careful with the capital letter. It must be the same as it. We will also align all lines on this section. The other things to do is we will erase the files section. I will also delete the require IP line. So this is a basic Apache config. I suggest you to adjust the config as needed if you are a more advanced Apache Advanced user. That's it for this file. There's nothing else to edit. I will save it and close it. The next command is to configure the required password to log in the Nagios web interface. So by default, the admin user in Nagios is Nagios admin. With this command, it will ask us to configure the password we want for this user. Once again, this command will be in the video description. The command asks us for the password we want. You have to write the password you want twice. We are almost done with the Apache configuration. Don't give up. The other configuration file we need to edit is the /etc/nagios4/cgi.cfg. So again, use your favorite file editor to open it. In this configuration file, we must find the line use authentication equal 0, and we will change the 0 to 1. After this modification, I will save and quit the text editor. And now we must restart the Apache services to apply all these changes. In Ubuntu 22.04, the command to manage services is systemctl. So sudo is for the admin rights, systemctl is to manage services, restart is the parameter to restart a service, and Apache 2 in this example is the name of the service we want to restart. And I'm going to do the same thing for the Nagios 4 service. Another things you should do is to configure the Nagios service to start at the system boot. You can do that with the enabled parameter. The complete command is systemctl enable Nagios 4. Of course, it is important to put sudo in front of this command to have the administrator right. The Nagios 4 config files in Ubuntu 22.04 rnd/etc/nagios4 directory. So we will list this directory content with the ls command. And another interesting directory for this video is the /etc/nagios4/objects. It will contain all the machine and services we want to monitor. I will explain in the future video in detail the content of this directory. Okay, we are now at the step to configure the host we want to monitor. We will create a file in this directory And this file will be named linuxos.cfg. On this file, we will specify different Linux machines we want to monitor. Of course, it's a new file we created, so it's an empty file. I'm going to copy-paste the config that I already have. The way to configure the host is with a define host line and then add all configuration line you want for this host. In my case, it's going to be a very simple configuration. But in a future tutorial, we will add more advanced stuff. In this basic configuration, we have the line use. Basically, it is which configuration template we want to use. I will show you later in another video where the Linux server template is configured. Just for information, all parameters configured and Linux-server template will be used by all hosts using this template. For example, if I want configuring to monitor each Linux host every 10 minutes, instead of configuring this parameter host by host, I will just put it in the template once, and all the machines using this template will be monitored every 10 minutes. The hostname line is the hostname we want for this machine. In my case, I'm going to call it Ubuntu-machine. For this tutorial, I have two machines. The first one is my Nagios server, and the second one is a fresh installed Ubuntu machine that I want to monitor. The alias is the name of the machine that will be displayed in the Nagios console or in the alert. In my case, I will put the same thing as my host name. Adjust this configuration according to your need. Another very important parameter is the address line. You have to specify the IP address of the machine you want to monitor. In my case, it will be, oops, I made a small mistake in my copy paste. It's gonna be 10.0.0.34 because .33 is my Nagios server. The .34 is the machine I want to monitor. In your case, modify this field with the IP address you want to monitor. The other line, host group, is the host group you want to assign to the machine. It is not the same thing as the use line explained earlier. The use is which template I want to use for the machine settings, while the host group is the group of hosts that I want to configure. I will be able to configure, for example, for all members of this group, I want to monitor this service. Basically, the way I work when I configure my host, I put all my Ubuntu machine in one group, all CentOS machine in the other group, and all the Windows machine in another group too. And then later, when I configure services to monitor, I just add the host group to the different services that I want to configure. So we have the first one, host configured. I'm going to leave most of the default setting for this video, but we will come back in another video to configure other things like the interval we want to monitor the host and how to configure the email alert. For example, you can configure that we want email alert only the weekdays. Below, add all machines you want to monitor with their own defined host and all the parameters you want for each machine. So here, a small example where three machines have been specified and in the config file. In my case, I only have one machine for the tutorial, and how I work is at the end of my Linux host file, I put the configuration of my host group. To configure a host group, This is with the define host group line. What you need to configure is the host group name, which is the name of the host group you want. So in my case, it will be Ubuntu host. Of course, you must put the same name as the host group you assign in the above parameter on the host configuration. The second line is the alias. It will be the display name for this host group in the Nagios console. For me, it will be called Ubuntu Linux host. You can put whatever you want. For example, you can write Ubuntu machine, Ubuntu computer, what you want, but preferably make sure the name is meaningful. If you write potatoes, it will work, but you risk being confused if you see the word potatoes in the Nagios console. You will say, what is that? Okay, we're done with this config file, so we're going to save and close it. The next step will be to make small addition in the general config file of Nagios. This file is the etc/nagios4/nagios.cfg. We are going to go down on this config file. By default, if you don't do any modification in this Nagios file, it will not use our new config file created some minutes ago to define my Linux host. Here we see all uncommand lines currently used by default in the default config. We're going to add our files created earlier. I will add it in a specific section for our Linux host. I'm just going to modify this line. This step is optional because it's a command line. I'm going to remove the local and just put Linux host. It will be definition for monitoring Linux host. I'm going to add a line to specify the config file we created earlier, and we are going to make a second file because later on a future tutorial I'm also going to configure the services for our Linux machine. This second config file will be for all services we want to monitor. In short, in my case, I like to put host in one file and services in a separate configuration file. Please note, you can put all the config in just one file, but at some point it can get harder to console the file if you have a lot of hosts and services. That's why I'm going to use multiple files for my configuration. Save the file and close it. We have reached the step of restarting the Nagios server. But before restarting it, I always do a syntax check of my config file, just to be sure. There is a command to do that. Sudo nagios4-v and the general Nagios config file path. This will validate if syntax is okay, or if I did a mistake, as example, if I forgot to define a host, or if I forgot to define a group host, but I'm using it on another place in the config, this tool will be able to recognize it and show me the missing host group. So it's a very useful command. After each modification, I always run this command to make sure there are no errors. And in my case, I have an error. Oh no. We see that we have 3 error lines. When I have many errors with this tool, I always check the first one, because sometimes just fixing the first one will fix the below errors, even if the error indicate on the next line has nothing to do with the first one. Sometimes the first error confuses the rest of configuration file. So if I look at the first error, it say cannot open config files. And I understand why, and it's normal because I define this config file, but I forgot to create the file. Okay, I'm going to create the file, but it will be an empty file for the moment. I'm going to try the verification again. And this time there is no error. So normally when everything is fine, we have 0 total warning and 0 total error, just like this. Another things I like about this command is when you have a config error and you try to restart a service, this error can prevent the service to start. So doing this command before the restart will allow us to have no downtime of the Nagios service if there is an error. We can correct this error and then when everything is okay, we restart the service. Now we are at restarting the Nagios service step. So to restart it, you need to use this command sudo systemctl reload Nagios 4. So we will return to our machine with the internet browser and we will try again the Nagios web interface. And this time it asked me for a user and a password. I will enter the default username, it's Nagios admin, and then the password I defined earlier. If at this time when you click on the host link on the left and you still have a .cgi error, just try to click on the services page and come back to the host line to see if it works. At this step, our monitoring solution consists only of to ping our host. If you go on the host page, you will see the list of your hosts. Here in our case, our Ubuntu machine is red because this machine is currently off and not responding to the ping. If I turn it on, it will come green at the next checkup. Well, we're now at the step to configure the services for our host. For example, to monitor the CPU usage, the disk space usage. But I see this video lasts more than 20 minutes, so I will stop that for now. And another will follow shortly. The future video will show you how to monitor Linux machine services. And then another video will come out to show you how to monitor a Windows machine. So I hope you liked this video and I hope too it was useful for you. So all I have to do now is to wish you a nice day. Bye bye.